Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. We begin with The Acolyte. Leslie Edlund has teased, one of the episodes is inspired by Alien, one of my favourite franchises, and another one by Predator. She didn't elaborate, but from the sounds of things, every episode has a different thematic influence. But there is a more significant piece of news for the show. An anonymous leaker who got a lot of information right for the Ahsoka show is back. This is the same person who told us about the appearance of C-3PO and various other things before the episodes dropped. And now they're talking about The Acolyte. We're in for a treat. Specifically episode 5. They tease a very exciting episode with a 40-minute fight sequence that is, quote, so good. And while early reviewers only got the first 4 episodes of the Leslie Edlund show, just like for the Ahsoka series, this insider has information beyond the scope of just those. There are apparently some big surprises awaiting us in the second half of season 1. And I've got to say, just based on the footage we've seen, interviews and experience, the 2 people I'm most looking forward to in this series are Master Indara, played by Space Trinity, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Master Soul, played by Lee Jung-jae. That is some pretty major talent for a show like The Acolyte. Very excited for them. I'm hoping the show's a banger, and I will give you my honest reviews from June 5th. So now on to the main topic. A very important piece of news has emerged concerning George Lucas. He was at Cannes Film Festival and naturally, he received a standing ovation and an honorary Palme d'Or for his contribution to cinema. The crowd, who was a much younger cohort than usually seen at these kinds of events, were hollering and cheering for him. The creator of the Star Wars universe who sold Lucasfilm to Disney back in 2012. And as we approach The Acolyte, George was asked for his opinion on recent Disney Star Wars projects. And while he did have some good things to say praising the technology and production on some of the shows, it doesn't sound like he was a fan of the sequel trilogy, and doesn't think the creatives understand Star Wars the way he saw it. We know he enjoyed Kenobi and Rogue One, but it sounds to me like he's still hurt about decisions in 7, 8 and 9. It sounds like on the one hand, he is proud of the direction of Star Wars with the production, and quote, a lot of talent, a lot of great ideas, but they don't seem to understand his concepts. Well, George once again has come out, this time I would say taking a much stronger stance. This is from The Hollywood Reporter and they say this. George Lucas says, ideas in the original sort of got lost in post-Disney Star Wars films. Now we know Disney discarded much of his treatments for what he wanted for those films. They had no obligation to use them, but he has been vocal about his dismay at the fact they kind of promised him they would be using them to an extent. They did use the structure and skeleton for some of his ideas before then twisting and changing them, but it was largely very different. And if you guys remember, he made it very clear episodes 1 to 6 are his, the rest deviated from his story. And this, once again, is something he criticized in Cannes, and specifically, the way he thinks Disney and the sequel trilogy do not understand the concept of the Force. Let's look at the full context. So, The Hollywood Reporter say this. Lucas defended his Star Wars prequel films against the haters, arguing that critics have forgotten that Star Wars was never meant to be a grown-up movie. It was supposed to be a kids' movie for 12-year-olds that were going through puberty, who don't know what they're doing and are asking all the big questions. What should I be worried about? What's important in life? And Star Wars has all those things in there. They're buried in there, but you definitely get it. The negative response to his Star Wars prequels, Lucas argued, came from, quote, critics and fans who had been 10 years old when they saw the first one, and didn't want to watch a children's film. The public trashing of Jar Jar Binks, one of the first figures to be cancelled on the then nascent internet, reminded Lucas of the original response to C-3PO. Everybody said the same thing about 3PO, that he was irritating, and we should get rid of him. When I did the third one, and he's talking about Jedi, it was the Ewoks. Those are little teddy bears, it's a kids movie. We don't want to see a kids movie. I said, it is a kids movie. It's always been a kids movie. And here's something interesting. George Lucas has once again shut down all requests for a re-release of the theatrical versions of the original trilogy. We're not going to see 4K versions of the despecialized editions. He said, quote, that's the way he wants it. We did release the original one on Laserdisc, and everybody got really mad. They said, it looks terrible. And I said, yeah, I know it did. That's what it looked like. Okay, so he's addressed the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy. So now on to Disney. I was the one who really knew what Star Wars was, who actually knew this world, because there is a lot to it. The Force, for example. Nobody understood the Force. When they started other ones after I sold the company, so he's talking about The Force Awakens, a lot of the ideas that were in the original got lost. But that's the way it is, and he concedes, you give it up, you give it up. He's very detached. Episodes 1 to 6 are his, everything afterwards. He understood, when he sold Lucasfilm, it's no longer his baby. So some pretty remarkable and interesting comments made by George. And this comes just 2 weeks after the revelation, he loved the Kenobi show. I think he loved seeing Ewan and Hayden, and even if he loved the production and the plot, it's because it deals with characters that were his era, not the new sequel trilogy. I'd be very curious what he would make of The Acolyte, a show that takes place 100 years before The Phantom Menace, that some fans are worried is going to step on the toes of the canon. I wonder if he would approve. At the time of making this video, his opinion on it is unknown. But in George Lucas's opinion, 7, 8 and 9 missed the point. To his estimation, they didn't understand the themes, and I would say the soul and the heart of his 2 trilogies. Would fans have loved George's version of the sequels? I honestly don't know. Because he was criticised, and for years, a lot of fans were really angry with the prequel trilogy. But that's what he had to say. If there's anyone's opinion I respect above all else when it comes to Star Wars, it is George. There is no Star Wars without him and his legacy. And a really lovely quote is how Star Wars really is for everyone. Here's what he said. Most of the people, and he's talking about characters in Star Wars, are aliens. The idea is you're supposed to accept people for what they are, whether they're big and furry, or whether they're green, or whatever. The idea is that all people are equal. Oh George, how we love you so much. Thank you for this incredible galaxy far, far away. Honestly, as someone who grew up with the prequel trilogy, your universe means everything to me. And so moving on, my dear friends, Daisy Ridley, who has inadvertently confirmed what Jeff Snyder recently said on his podcast, that the Rey movie is very likely to be pushed back, and instead, James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi is releasing in its place in 2026, alongside Mando and Grogu, which comes earlier in the year. But the December 2026 slot is no longer going to be the Rey film, and how do we know this? Well, when Daisy was asked about the movie, she said she's going to take a long break first. It was originally set to begin filming last month. However, it's not started production yet, and it doesn't sound as though it's going to start anytime soon. She says she's looking forward to the summer off, and then at some stage in the future she's going to come back to it. Don't expect this movie in 2026, most probably a year later in 2027. That is all there is on this subject. I can't believe I'm saying this, but knowing Lucasfilm, could this delay be indefinite? I have no idea, but this has happened before. For now, production is underway for The Mandalorian and Grogu, and there is more information coming out about that movie and the one by James Mangold than anything concerning the new Jedi Order, Daisy and Rey. Even she doesn't know.